Now my question is, does the spirit of prophecy throw any light on the subject? And we will look at some of these, and this is not time setting. I'm not time setting at all. I'm just looking at what does the spirit of prophecy say. And I'm not talking about the time or the hour. And I'm not interested in any prophetic interpretation where we take the prophetic times of Daniel, for example, and make them literal times in our dates. That is a system of futurism which is not in harmony with the Bible. We're looking at this cosmic time. And I want to know, what does the spirit of prophecy say? There are in fact 42, 74 if you count the compilations, 6,000-year statements, and 41 4,000-year statements in her writings. Now, how did I get interested in this? My interest in these statements comes from my study of creation versus evolution, particularly with regard to the age of the earth. However, it was proposed by some scholars that these times are not definitive and simply meant, in other words, these 42 or 74 statements on 6,000 and the 41 on 4,000 years, that they were not meant definitively, and that they actually meant since the beginning, during Old Testament times. But at least one of these was definitive when she stated the world is now only about 6,000 years old. That's in 3 Spiritual Gifts, page 92. Now, Ellen White uses the phrases about 6,000 years 13 times. She uses the statement almost 6,000 years once, and she uses the statement nearly 6,000 years 12 times. But there are 3 where she states more than 6,000 or over 6,000. And the rest of the statements just say for 6,000 years. I'm not time setting. I'm studying the spirit of prophecy. I want to know what the prophet said. I don't want to know what a theologian thinks the prophet thought or what influenced the prophet. I want to know, what did she say? So let's ask the question, according to the spirit of prophecy, how long will sin reign? Well, here is a statement. After 6,000 years of sin, the earth was renewed. The great plan of redemption, this comes from Adventist Home, results in fully bringing back the world into God's favor. All that was lost by sin is restored. Not only man, but the earth is redeemed to be the eternal abode of the obedient. For 6,000 years, Satan has struggled to maintain possession of the earth. Now God's original purpose in its creation is accomplished. The saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Now I want to come back to this statement at a later stage. But the point for discussion right here is that she definitively states that for 6,000 years, Satan has struggled to maintain possession of the earth. That is a very direct statement. So my question now is, where, according to the spirit of prophecy, are we in the stream of time? So when, according to the spirit of prophecy, will 6,000 years have elapsed since the fall of man? Well, let's start with the 4,000-year statements. At Christ's baptism, sin had reigned, according to the spirit of prophecy, 4,000 years. And that was in 27 AD. Let's make sure. Because there are so many of these talks out there which give dates either calculating, as we saw, from the birth of Christ, or from the crucifixion, or from any time period in between. I want to know exactly. I don't want to know about. What does she say? So let's be careful in the way we approach it. Christ in the wilderness of temptation. Let's just stop there. What year was that? Christ entered the wilderness of temptation directly after his baptism, and that was in 27 AD. Let's make sure. Christ in the wilderness of temptation stood in Adam's place to bear the test he failed to endure. Here Christ overcame in the sinner's behalf 4,000 years after Adam turned his back upon the light of his home. So since the fall of Adam to the temptation in the wilderness, which took place in 27 AD, is the time period since the fall of Adam. Separated from the presence of God, the human family had been departing each successive generation further from the original purity, wisdom, and knowledge which Adam possessed in Eden. Christ bore the sins and the infirmities of the race as they existed when he came to the earth to help man. In behalf of the race, with the weaknesses of fallen man upon him, he was to stand the temptation of Satan upon all points on which man could be assailed. So exactly 4,000 years since the fall of Adam to the wilderness of temptation. Let's read another one. The Savior of the world has no controversy with Satan, who was expelled from heaven because he was no longer worthy of a place there. He who could influence the angels of God against their supreme ruler, against his Son, their loved commander, and enlist their sympathy for himself, was capable of any deception. For 4,000 years he had been warring against the government of God and had lost none of his skills or power to tempt and deceive. Again, here Satan was going to confront Jesus in the wilderness of temptation, and he'd had 4,000 years to contemplate how he was overcome Jesus as he had overcome Adam. Let's make sure. On Jordan's banks, the voice from heaven, attended by the manifestation from the excellent glory, proclaimed Christ to be the Son of the Eternal. That is the baptism of Jesus, where the voice from heaven came and said, "This is my beloved Son." So we have a date. It was 27 AD. Satan was to personally encounter the head of the kingdom which he came to overthrow. If he failed, he knew that he was lost. Therefore, the power of his temptation was in accordance with the greatness of the object which he would lose or gain for 4,000 years. Now listen carefully. Ever since the declaration was made to Adam that the seed of the woman should bruise the serpent's head, he had been planning his manner of attack. We have precise times in this statement. From the fall of Adam up into the wilderness experience of Jesus, exactly 4,000 years. In other words, until the baptism. Let us go to the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. When the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his Son to redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. Galatians 4, verse 4 and 5. When the fullness of time had come. We need to know what that is. The Saviour's coming was foretold in Eden. When Adam and Eve first heard the promise, they looked for its speedy fulfillment. In other words, that promise that now had taken 4,000 years of time to be fulfilled. They joyfully welcomed their firstborn son, hoping that he might be the deliverer, but the fulfillment of the promise tarried. Those who first received it died without the sight. So the prophecy of Daniel revealed the time of his advent from the time that the promise was made that he would crush the serpent's head. But not all rightly interpreted the message. Century after century passed away, the voices of the prophets ceased. The hand of the oppressor was heavy upon Israel, and many were ready to exclaim, "The days are prolonged, and every vision faileth." Ezekiel 12, verse 22. So we know a time now, exactly 4,000 years since the fall of Adam, according to the spirit of prophecy. Please note, not according to me, according to the spirit of prophecy, exactly 4,000 years. So my question is this: if Christ came at exactly 4,000 years after Adam sinned, and if we add 2,000 years, could the world end in 2027 according to this calculation? Because remember, Christ came 27 AD, when 4,000 years since the fall of Adam had expired, and add to that the 2,000 years to make the 6,000, would bring us to the year 2027. But before I go there, and remember, I am not time-setting, I'm merely quoting the spirit of prophecy. I want to look at that statement that I referred to earlier. And I said we would come back to it. Let's look at it carefully. It's a statement about after 6,000 years of sin, the earth was renewed. The great plan of redemption results in fully bringing back the world into God's favor. All that was lost by sin is restored. Not only man, but the earth is redeemed to be the eternal abode of the obedient. For 6,000 years, Satan had struggled to maintain possession of the earth. Now, God's original purpose in its creation is accomplished. The saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever, even forever and ever. What is the context of this statement? Well, it is in the context of the final restoration, when the saints will possess this kingdom and the earth forever and ever. So it is after the millennium, when the earth will be restored to its original. But even after the millennium, the time period that Satan had been warring against this government was 6,000 years. For 6,000 years, Satan had struggled to maintain possession of the earth. So it's the time frame of his total struggle. Now remember, during the millennium, he cannot struggle. He's bound for 1,000 years. He is inactivated. He has no power to do anything. So how do we understand this? Let us look at Satan preparing for the final battle. This is me writing. So when the wicked are raised, Satan must have some time to prepare them for battle. If 2027 is the end of the 6,000-year period of warring against God, then this would exclude the time of preparation required after the wicked are raised. Is it possible, I'm just asking the question, that a time could be cut off from the 6,000 years before 2027? If so, then Christ must come sometime before 2027 to allow this, if we take the prophecies in the spirit of prophecy as definitive in terms of time. Now Romans 9 verse 28 says, "For he will finish the work and cut it short in righteousness, because a short work will the Lord make upon the earth." So there will be a time when he will cut it short. Here's another statement in the spirit of prophecy: those who are not interested in the cause of God on earth can never sing the song of redeeming love above. I saw that the quick work that God was doing on the earth would soon be cut short in righteousness, and that the messengers must speed swiftly on their way to search out the scattered flock. We have a work to do. I want to remind you again, this is not time setting, but let the Bible and the spirit of prophecy speak for themselves. Revelation 20 verse 3 says about the devil, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. So here is 1,000 years of rest, complete. And after that, he must be loosed a little season. So after the 1,000 years, there is a little season when he will be active again. But by the time you get to the restoration of the earth, Satan will have been active for exactly 6,000 years, according to that previous statement. So if we are now in 2020, and the 6,000 years would end in 2027, if we take them as a continuous period, and according to the spirit of prophecy, the 6,000-year period would come to an end in 2027. But a time period is cut off and added on to this portion of time when he prepares his army. Then how much time will be cut off? I don't know. Would 1 year be enough to organize such a vast army, to build weapons of war, to keep people alive and all the things that are necessary? Surely this takes time of preparation as they watch the city and prepare. Is it 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? I don't know. But whatever it is, it means we are, according to the spirit of prophecy, in that final week. And if that time is cut off, then Jesus must come in the next few years. And therefore the time is short. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying when he's coming. I'm saying its time is short. Matthew 24 verse 48 says, but, and if that evil servant, and this servant is someone that serves in God's church, shall say in his heart, my Lord delays his coming. In other words, when they will say, this is not it, this is not the beginning of sorrows. No, we still have time. Jesus won't come for another 100 years, 200 years. I've heard it from so many people. And shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken. In other words, if they start attacking those people who say that the time is short, while they are eating and drinking with those who are drunk from the wine of Babylon, perhaps they're sitting in ecumenical councils discussing these issues and talking about the fanatics out there who are saying that the time is short and who are watching the signs of the times. The Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites, and there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I've not made a time, brothers and sisters. I've just looked at what the spirit of prophecy says. And if those statements are inspired and not just influences from whatever source out there, then we have very little time left. Now, the Lord can add to that time. The Lord delays his coming. The Lord can take away from that time. I don't know. I'm not making a time. I'm saying that the time is short. And if a portion of time is cut off for preparation there at the end after the millennium, then the time is even shorter. I believe we are in the closing hours of this earth's history. And we will see a new world emerge out of this coronavirus. Maybe there will be that time of peace. And then again, that repetition of turmoil that we read about. Maybe that will take place. I don't know. Matthew 24 verse 3. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said to them, Take heed that no man deceive you. Let no man deceive you by telling you that the coming of the Lord is not for many years to come. It's not in accordance with the signs of the times in which we are living. I can see the forces of Rome mustering their powers in the echelons of power out there in governments, and I can see the implementation of the directives of the man of sin. He's calling for all to come and be educated on the subject, and I believe we are very close to the end. If I am proven wrong, then I will be happy, because then we'll have more time to preach the gospel. But if these things are so, and if the prophet can be taken at her word, then our time is very limited. Let us preach the three angels' messages. Let us make use of every capacity and ability that God has given us. And maybe He'll give us a window of opportunity, and maybe not. I don't know. But the time is short. Let's get ready for the coming of the Lord.